She dumped me at dinner. But karma hit her hard. She dumped me in front of her friends. Laughed in my face. A week later, she was fired, exposed, and begging me for help. Want to know how? Let's talk. Have you ever felt the ground disappear beneath your feet? Like everything you built for years crumbled in seconds? I have. I stood in the middle of an upscale restaurant, surrounded by people I thought were my friends. Across from me sat the woman I had spent the last 2 years of my life with. She swirled her wine casually, as if what she was about to say was just a minor inconvenience. But her words hit like a freight train. I need a real man, she smirked, leaning back in her chair. You're just not enough. For a moment, silence. Even the waiter, who had approached with a bottle of champagne, froze in place, as if realizing he had walked into something he shouldn't have heard. I didn't react right away. The voices of my so-called friends laughed, nodding along with her. They exchanged glances like they had been waiting for this moment. She continued, You're a nice guy, really. But you're boring. I'm tired of pretending. I stared at her, at the woman who had shared dreams with me, whispered I love you in the dark, held my hand like I was her whole world. I've been seeing someone else, she added. And honestly, best decision I've ever made. And then, she smiled. She actually smiled. I felt something boil inside me, something crack, but instead of exploding, I just cooled. Got it, I said simply. I reached for my car keys, stood up, and let my eyes drift over her and the group of friends we shared. They were waiting for me to break, to beg, to cause a scene. But I just turned and walked away. Left them there. Left her there. And the next morning, my phone blew up. 32 missed calls. I smirked, turned my ringer on, and waited. The show was just beginning. I sat on my couch, sipping my morning coffee, watching the notifications pile up. 32 missed calls. 17 texts. Her name flashed on my screen over and over again. Sophie. I didn't answer. Not yet. I could already imagine it. Her pacing in her apartment, phone in hand, panic setting in. She thought I'd crumble, that I'd chase after her, that I'd need closure. She was wrong. Instead, I took my time. I went for a run. I hit the gym. I lived my life. And every few hours, I'd glance at my phone, watching as her desperation grew. From smug to nervous. From nervous to panicked. The first messages were almost funny. Hey, let's talk. Don't be childish. I figured you'd be upset, but ignoring me? Really? Come on. Be an adult. I smirked. Classic. She expected me to explain myself. Then the messages shifted. I don't understand why you're acting like this. Just talk to me. Can we please just talk? That's when I knew. She was starting to regret it. And then, finally, at 3 a.m., the truth slipped out. We need to talk. It's important. Oh, there it is. Not I miss you. Not I'm sorry. No, she needed something. But what? I let her stew for a full day. Not a single response. Then, just as I was about to go to bed, my phone buzzed again. This time, from my friend Jason. Dude, you might want to call Sophie. She's freaking out. I stared at the screen. Jason. One of the guys who laughed at me last night. One of the guys who smirked as Sophie humiliated me. Now, suddenly, he cared? I chuckled to myself. Yeah. No. Instead, I did something better. I opened Instagram. Sophie had always been obsessed with her online image. She needed people to see her life as perfect, to see her as the girl who had it all. So I checked her profile. And there it was. The picture from last night was gone. The one she had posted just hours after I left. The one with her and her new guy, smiling at the restaurant, captioned, Best decision ever. Deleted. Oh, Sophie, you're already regretting it, aren't you? I smirked, tossed my phone onto my nightstand, and went to sleep like a baby. Let her panic. The real fun was just beginning. I woke up to 8 more missed calls. Sophie was spiraling. I took my time getting out of bed, stretching, enjoying the morning. When I finally checked my phone, a new text waited for me. We need to talk. Call me. Please. Please. That was new. I made myself breakfast. Took a shower. Checked my emails. And then, finally, I sent a single text. Busy. What do you want? Instant response. Can we meet? I almost laughed. She really thought I'd drop everything and rush to her. No. Say it here. She hesitated. 3 dots popped up. Disappeared. Popped up again. And then, I made a mistake. Bingo. I leaned back in my chair, waiting. I shouldn't have done it like that. It was wrong. But you have to understand, I just felt lost. Lost. Sure. That's what you call cheating now? Can we please talk in person? I let her wait. Gave her a taste of the silence she had no problem giving me last night. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. Then, fine. I'll just say it. I need your help. There it is. With what? And that's when she cracked. It's Mark. He's not who I thought he was. Mark. The guy she threw me away for. The real man she needed. I felt a slow, satisfied smirk creep onto my face. This was too good. That's not my problem. Please. I need to talk to you. Just once. She was desperate. And I wasn't. I tapped my fingers against the table, considering. I could ignore her. Walk away completely. Or I could find out just how badly she had ruined her own life. And I was in the mood for a show. Fine. 1 hour. My place. I put my phone down, grabbed a drink, and leaned back in my chair. This was going to be fun. An hour later, my doorbell rang. I didn't rush to answer. I let her stand there for a minute, shifting uncomfortably, letting the weight of her own choices sink in. Then, finally, I opened the door. And damn, she looked nothing like the smug, confident girl who had humiliated me in that restaurant. Her makeup was smudged, like she had been crying. Her hair was a mess. Her usually perfect outfit looked like she had just thrown it on without thinking. And her eyes, red, tired, desperate. She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. You have 5 minutes. She flinched but nodded quickly, stepping inside. She stood awkwardly in my living room, arms wrapped around herself, like she didn't belong there anymore. Because she didn't. I screwed up. She let out a shaky breath. I thought Mark was different. I just stared at her, waiting. She swallowed hard, then he's a liar. I raised an eyebrow. No shit. He made all these promises, she rushed on. Told me he'd take care of me. That he had money, connections, a future. But it was all fake. And just like that, everything clicked. She hadn't come here because she missed me. She hadn't come here because she felt guilty. She had come here because she had nothing left. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Her head snapped up. This isn't funny. Oh, it's hilarious. I crossed my arms, leaning against the counter. Let me get this straight. You threw away a 2-year relationship for some guy you barely knew, because you thought he was better. And now, what? He used you? Lied to you? Cheated? Maybe. She looked away. That was all the confirmation I needed. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. I don't need you to take me back, she whispered. I didn't know who else to talk to. I stared at her for a long moment. And then I said the words that shattered whatever hope she still had left. That's not my problem. Her breath caught. Wait, please. But I was already opening the door. You made your choice, Sophie. I gestured toward the hallway. Now live with it. For a second, I thought she might argue. That she'd fight, cry, beg. But then, finally, she just nodded, swallowed hard, and walked past me without another word. As soon as the door clicked shut, I exhaled. That should have been the end of it. But something told me this wasn't over yet. For the next few days, everything was quiet. Too quiet. Sophie had disappeared. No more calls. No more texts. No desperate pleas. I should have felt relieved. Should have moved on. But deep down, I knew her. She wasn't the type to just give up. And I was right. It started small. A mutual friend texting me, asking if I had really broken Sophie's heart. Then another message. Someone from work asking if I was okay. I was confused until I checked Facebook. And there it was. A long, dramatic post from Sophie. Carefully worded. Playing the victim. Sometimes, people you love just stop caring. No explanation. No closure. Just a cold, heartless goodbye. Oh, she was good. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. The comments flooded in. You deserve better, girl. Some men just don't appreciate what they have. He'll regret it. I stared at the screen, shaking my head. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't heartbroken. She was rebuilding her image, making sure she looked like the one who had been wronged. Classic Sophie. I ignored it. Let her have her little pity party. But then, she crossed the line. Because the next morning, I got a text from my boss. Boss, hey, can we talk? Something came up. I frowned, confused. But when I walked into his office, the first thing I saw was an email printed out on his desk. And my blood ran cold. It was from Sophie. A long, detailed message filled with lies. She claimed I had been unstable since our breakup, that I had been harassing her, that she was worried for my mental state. And the worst part? She made it sound believable. She had always been good with words. twisting the truth just enough to make herself the victim. I looked at my boss, jaw tight. You don't believe this, do you? He sighed. I don't. But HR is gonna want to document this. Just to be safe. I clenched my fists. She wasn't just trying to ruin my reputation. She was trying to ruin my life. I walked out of that office, my mind racing. This wasn't about a breakup anymore. This wasn't about heartbreak. This was war. And if Sophie wanted to play dirty, she had no idea who she was messing with. I sat in my car, staring at the email printout in my hands. Heart racing. Jaw clenched. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Sophie wanted to play games. Twist the truth. Weaponize heartbreak like it was a PR campaign. Fine. But if she thought I was going to just sit back and let her burn my name to the ground, she didn't know me at all. Because here's what Sophie didn't understand. I don't do messy fights. I don't scream. I don't chase. I destroy quietly. First, I called Jason, the friend who watched Sophie humiliate me in that restaurant. He answered on the third ring. Yo. Tell me everything, I said. About Mark. About what happened after. Jason hesitated. Look, man. I didn't know she'd go that far. What happened, Jason? He cracked. Fast. Turns out Sophie's rebound. Mark? He wasn't just a liar, he was married. He had been stringing Sophie along, promising her a future while his actual wife was 8 months pregnant. When Sophie found out, she snapped. Started calling his wife. Showing up at his work. Telling people he manipulated her. Sound familiar? Because it was the same pattern. She didn't handle rejection, she rewrote it. Recast herself as the heartbroken heroine every time. I hung up the phone and took a deep breath. My hands were still shaking. I had every reason to go nuclear. Post screenshots. Share everything she had said and done. Expose her. But then I realized something. I didn't need revenge. I just needed the right people to see the truth. So I called Kelly. She worked in our HR department. Smart. Sharp. Someone I'd helped land her current role last year. Hey, I said, calm and steady. Can I ask a hypothetical? By the end of that call, my record was clean. The complaint from Sophie? Logged, but dismissed. No investigation. No consequences. No stain on my file. That should have been the win. But Sophie wasn't done. Because that night, she showed up. On my doorstep. Eyes puffy. Hair wet from the rain. A trembling hand clutching her phone. I opened the door and said nothing. She didn't even wait for permission. She stepped inside. You ruined me, she whispered. You made everyone think I'm crazy. I blinked. You did that yourself. Her voice broke. You don't get it. I lost my job. Mark's wife emailed my boss. My landlord wants me out. I crossed my arms. And what does that have to do with me? She looked at me like I had just slapped her. I needed you. I laughed once. Cold. Sharp. You needed someone. You just thought I was dumb enough to still be that person. She didn't respond. Just stood there, breaking. And for a second, just one, I felt pity. But then I remembered the email. The lies. The attempt to ruin my life. I opened the door again. Good luck, Sophie. She didn't move. You said you loved me once, she whispered. I didn't answer. Just watched her walk out into the rain. And closed the door. This time for good. A week passed. Quiet. Too quiet. No texts. No calls. No drama. I started sleeping again. Actually sleeping. Deep. Undisturbed. The kind where you don't wake up with your chest tight or your mind racing. But then something started nagging at me. A feeling. A memory. Something Sophie said that night on my doorstep. Mark's wife emailed my boss. How would she know that? Mark's wife. The one Sophie claimed she never met. I couldn't shake it. So I started digging. Not out of revenge. Out of curiosity. I opened an old shared drive Sophie and I used when we were planning a trip last year. She probably forgot it even existed. Turns out, she hadn't just saved vacation plans there. There were screenshots. Emails. Voice recordings. Stuff she wasn't supposed to have. Private conversations between Mark and his wife. Screenshots of his LinkedIn profile. A copy of his home address. She had been tracking him. Stalking him. Long before she even left me. The breakup? The restaurant ambush? The smug little speech? Planned. Scripted. Rehearsed. She wasn't lost. She wasn't confused. She was already deep into a fantasy with Mark before she ever told me it was over. But here's where it got darker. One folder, labeled Backup, was filled with photos. Me. Outside my office. At the gym. Even one of me sleeping. Taken from inside my bedroom. My blood ran cold. I checked the date on the image. It was from a night after we broke up. She had been in my apartment, without my knowledge. Suddenly, everything changed. This wasn't a breakup story anymore. This was obsession. And I realized I hadn't just dodged a bullet. I had dodged a full-on emotional train wreck. But the real twist? There was one last file. A video. I clicked it. And there she was, sitting in her room, talking directly to the camera. He's going to regret this. All of it. He thinks he's free, but I'm not done yet. My heart stopped. She recorded it before she showed up at my door. That entire sob story. The tears, the rain, the I need you. Fake. Scripted. A performance. She never wanted closure. She wanted control. And now that she lost it, she was unraveling. The moment I finished watching that video, I knew I had two choices. 1. Do nothing. Pretend I never saw it. Move on. 2. Or, turn it over. All of it. Every screenshot. Every voice memo. Every stalker-level file she hid on that drive. And believe me, I hesitated. Because part of me didn't want to escalate it. Didn't want to throw gas on a fire that was already dying. But then I remembered her email to my boss. She tried to ruin my life. Quietly. Behind my back. And this wasn't petty. This was dangerous. So I made a copy of the folder. Renamed it. For legal purposes. Then I sent one email. To Mark's wife. Subject line, you deserve to know everything. I expected her to ignore it. Maybe report it as spam. But no. She replied in 11 minutes. Call me. Please. So I did. Her name was Rachel. And when I say she had receipts, I mean entire binders. Turns out Sophie hadn't just stalked Mark. She had created a fake Instagram profile pretending to be Rachel, messaging people at Mark's job, trying to sabotage his marriage and career. She was trying to clear the path, not just steal him, replace her. Rachel was done being silent. She sent everything to her lawyer. And after I forwarded her my copy of the backup folder, she gasped and said, "She broke into your apartment?" "Yeah," I said. "That's what it looks like." "Okay," she said. "Then it's time." 2 days later, I got a call from someone I didn't expect. "Jason." "Dude," he whispered, like he was afraid someone was listening. "You won't believe what just happened. Try me." Sophie got fired. Like, publicly. They escorted her out. HR had security there. I didn't say anything. And bro, he added, Rachel posted everything. Screenshots. Videos. Emails. Everyone knows. I opened Instagram. Rachel's post was still up. And the comments. Oh man. Wait, is this about Sophie M? I knew she was shady. This is terrifying. That poor guy she dated. She never mentioned me by name. Never needed to. Sophie's entire facade. The image. The victimhood. The sweet girl routine. Gone. And that night, my phone lit up again. "You told her? You just ruined my life. Please. You have to fix this." I stared at the screen, heart rate steady. Then I typed the last message I'd ever sent her. "You did that all by yourself." Blocked. I thought that was the end. Really, I did. Sophie had lost her job. Her fake story had crumbled. Everyone knew the truth. And me? I was finally breathing again. But like I said before, Sophie doesn't go quietly. 1 week later, I got a letter. A physical one. In the mail. Who even does that anymore? No return address. Just my name. My actual name. Not the nickname she always used. That was my first red flag. Inside, a handwritten note. 1 page. Perfect cursive. Like she wanted it to feel sincere. Personal. But I knew better. I know I made mistakes. I was hurt. I felt abandoned. I panicked. I never meant to scare you. It was an apology, technically. But not really. She never admitted to anything. Never said the words. I lied. I manipulated. I broke into your life. Instead, she wrapped it in excuses. I was in a dark place. You were the only one who ever saw the real me. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope you don't hate me. Classic Sophie. She still thought this was about feelings. About closure. Like we were characters in some tragic love story instead of what we actually were. A decent guy and a woman who tried to ruin his life because she couldn't control him anymore. I didn't respond. Didn't burn the letter. Didn't frame it for dramatic effect. I just tucked it into a folder labeled documentation. Because I was done playing. But I wasn't done protecting myself. And good thing I didn't let my guard down. Because 2 days later, I got a knock on my door. I checked the peephole. It wasn't Sophie. It was a cop. He was polite. Said he was just checking in. Said Sophie had voiced concerns about her safety and mentioned me. Me, the guy who hadn't even spoken to her in weeks. I calmly invited him in. Explained the full situation. Showed him the email she sent my boss. The screenshots. The files. And finally, the video. His face changed completely. "You've already contacted legal counsel?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "I'm not taking chances." He nodded. "Smart. And, just so you know, if she shows up again, you have enough here to file a restraining order." I thanked him and walked him out. As the door closed, I stood in my hallway, hand on the knob, pulse steady. This wasn't fear anymore. It was clarity. Sophie didn't want me back. She wanted to rewrite the narrative. She needed to be the victim. But the truth was out. And now, the only person who believed her stories was her. It's been 6 months. Half a year since Sophie's name disappeared from my notifications. Since the last fake apology. Since the last knock on my door. 6 months of peace. But here's the thing about people like her. They don't disappear. They just reroute. I heard through the grapevine she moved out of state. Rebranded her social media. New hair. New city. New narrative. The last version I saw of her Instagram? A quote. Something dramatic. Of course. Some people will only love you if you let them control you. No caption. No comments. Just that. A final dig. One last desperate attempt to frame her downfall as empowerment. But you know what? I didn't feel anger. Or revenge. Or even satisfaction. I felt nothing. Because the truth is, I didn't destroy her. I just stopped saving her. Every lie she told. Every email she forged. Every guilt trip. Every smear. Every manipulative performance. It all crumbled the moment I walked away. I didn't scream. Didn't retaliate. Didn't blast her online. I just let her expose herself. And in the end, that was enough. So if you're reading this, if you've ever been gaslit, discarded, replaced, and then painted as the villain when you finally drew the line, just know, you don't have to burn their world down. You just have to stop holding it up. And when you do, when they realize you're no longer their audience, no longer their shield, no longer their story's fallback character, that's when the collapse begins. Not with fire, but with silence. That's the real ending. Not revenge. Not rage. Freedom.